I am so happy to be here with one of my dearest friends, a wonderful counselor, Father Carel-Piet van Eeden. It's so good to see your shining face there from South Africa. Ah, you are so many things. You're a counselor. You're a metaphysical counselor as well.
Mhm.
You're with a white robe. You better say it right for me. The
The White
Benedictine
Robed Monks
white
of
robe
Saint
monks.
Benedict.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've learned a lot about them, the white robe monks of Saint Benedict. One of the things that you practice is listening,
Yes.
which you do so very well.
Thank you.
And it's a good thing because I talked a lot.
We need to be there for people to unburden themselves.
And I did this week. You know that. Oh, what a week. This week. I mean, I think I'll go through the story maybe a little bit and how you've been involved and helped me through this as well. And then, I mean, truly something miraculous happened this week. Truly, something miraculous did happen. And it doesn't always happen when we ask for prayers to be answered. We never know the higher plan and maybe the whole complete higher plan. But um, this week there was a huge, huge miracle that happened. And it's so amazing because we're recording this on April 17th. My sister Pamela has her birthday tomorrow, her heavenly birthday now tomorrow.
Mm.
And she passed away July 29th. And I started work on In the Hands of God with your help, your music, and inspiration for months in that creating of the music and song process. And then going about finding, how to proceed and finding Stephen Malillo doing just heavenly arrangements, so beautiful. And then finding a vocalist and finding Grammy Award winning Darlene Coldenhoven, it all started coming together. There were some issues with CD Baby that were rather frustrating, but we just found out that it's now on Here Now, and that's the. I'll show a couple of pages. This is Here Now for people watching on video. This is part of the miracle. This just happened. I just checked literally moments ago, and now In the Hands of God is on all the sites to stream. And that happened just in time for my sister's heavenly birthday. And I'll put that, and it's available also on the website. So this is really a miracle in itself because and I know we went through stuff trying to get this done, and I couldn't tell you how many times I'm going because I have my name Reverend CindyPaulos
Mm.
on the CD. For some reason this year they wouldn't allow that on CD Baby because I have my name as CindyPaulos with them and on the music and writing the lyrics.
Mm.
But thank you God, it came out in time for what I wanted it to be out with. I never ever expected, Father, when I was doing this music with Ham's spirit coming through me, that it would have the journey that it's taken even intensified that as it did this last week.
True
Um,
that.
it's interesting because I think I've talked to you about Reverend Mary Omwick, right?
Yes.
She's an amazing unity minister, very, very close friend of mine. She wrote the opening of my book, Spiritual Tools for a Better Life. I'm wearing her jacket she gave me. We've had prayer circles together. She's encouraged me in so many ways. And we would go out and celebrate each other's birthdays and go out and meet. And she was one of the few people who understand. You are in the same situation where you understand how spirit is so important. And she understood that, and she understand my love for Mother Mary.
Mm.
And it's so nice when we find people like you and her that understand the spiritual side of ourselves. Because a lot of people are not open to exactly what we're talking about. You know what I'm talking about?
True, true.
So
Uh,
she had been dealing with a lot of health issues for a couple of years, and how I sent her the In the Hands of God music that I only had actually by sent her through Hightail as files before the album came out. And she got to listen to it and she loved it and she shared it with some people. I didn't tell her she wasn't supposed to really share it with anyone yet because it wasn't really out yet, but she loved it so much she shared it. And she just told me how heavenly it was. And she was in ICU with my life partner and she passed away Thursday morning. She passed away. And you said to me something, because I've been calling you, right? I've been
We've
calling
been
you
having a daily chat.
many a chat. And since I get up early, I call you after I meditate, and it's about usually 7 o'clock in South Africa when it's 7 o'clock here. And I've called you in tears many weeks in this last week, many times in this last week. And when I told you what happened with her, you said you thought that Reverend Mary Omick had a hand in what happened, and
Definitely.
I think so too. And what happened was we have radio stations. I've been with John for ages, decades and upon decades, 40 years plus. And he goes in early to the station while I'm still meditating. And he went in 6:30 last Friday, which would have been April 9th, and had a heart attack right there at the station. And his heart had been racing. He'd asked for a glass of water. It took a couple of gasps and literally his pulse stopped. Someone there started trying to give him CPR. And then, thank God, the emergency personnel came very quickly within about 3 minutes or 4 minutes. But I raced over, but it had been that he'd been there with no pulse for about 12 minutes when I got there. And I started calling his name. I mean, I was calling his name like you call when you're trying to really, really reach someone. And he got his pulse back, but he'd been dead, literally dead, for about 15 minutes when they brought him back. Then I drove to the ER, and with COVID, I couldn't go inside. They wouldn't let me in. And I was at that point, I'm not an emotional person. I don't usually cry, but I was in tears. I said, let me in, please. It's a matter of life and death. And they said, no. But they sent a beautiful chaplain out named Amy. Amy came out and she was so lovely. And she'd heard of your organization, the group you're with, the White Robe Monks of St. Benedict. And I told her how you wrote this music with me, and I played her In the Hands of God. And I was sitting there crying with my mask on, with her mask on, and she started crying, listening to the music. And as I was playing In the Hands of God, I looked up and we have egrets, the white egrets. Do you have them in South Africa? Yeah, they're big. I just for a moment paused and I saw this white egret fly. It was a very blue day, blue sky, white egret flying across the sky. I went, oh my, that's John's spirit, right? So into ICU, no response. They brought his temperature down, basically almost frozen, right where the body's still. I don't know what you call that. You know what they call that?
Hypothermia.
That's what they did, hypothermia. And then they started on Sunday to try to bring him back, but they were doing it very slowly because his heart would race. And it took about 8 hours to bring him back to normal temperature. And then they said within a day or two, they should start seeing some response. They were not seeing any response. And when they tried to take him out of sedation, because he has intubated and everything down his throat, the tube, his heart would start racing after they took him off sedation, and his heart would race so much that they had to put him back under again. So after trying every day this, I talked to him you can only do the chat, FaceTime. And I told him, I knew that when I looked at him, there was something there. And I said to him on Wednesday, John, if you're there, I really know that it's probably very beautiful where you are. You don't have to come back if you don't want to. But I'd love you to come back. And if you want to come back, you're going to have to start responding to voice commands because they're saying that you're not there.
Mm.
In fact, after that call, the doctor called me and said, listen, we're not seeing a response. We only keep the tubes in intubation for about 10 days. It's already been 6 days. I just want to prepare you. It's probably time to let him go. He said he's had 78 years. He's had a good life, a successful life. Only about 4 to 5% of the people who go through this with being dead for that long can ever come back. And then we don't know what happens to them, even if they do come back. So, the only thing we could do was put him on a tracheotomy and then a feeding tube. And I don't think he'd want to do that. And I talked to you about this, right?
We did, yes,
I,
we did.
I, I called you in tears the next morning saying, the doctor's saying, and I was just, I don't cry like that. I was sobbing saying, I'm going to have to, and I wrote him a goodbye poem.
It was touching, and it was really felt like goodbye at that time.
And then I called ICU and I talked to the night nurse because it was at that time about, I don't know, 6:30 or 7. And I said, how's John doing? He says he's responding to voice commands. I said, what? Everyone's saying he's not responding. Not just that, like 3 hours later, they were able to take the tubes out. They were able to take the sedation out enough where he was able to talk and he said, I want to come home. Now, and I know that I'm going, part of me is thinking, does that mean he wants to go home to heaven
Yes,
because he was there? Or did he want, and he did know my name. There were still a lot of questions, but he continued to do well. And I did FaceTime with him a couple of times. I played him in the hands of God during that week 2 times on my computer while he was doing the FaceTime with me on my phone. Um, then he got better and he was
wow.
able to swallow water. Which is one of the big things they needed to make sure he could eat on his own and swallow water, because if you can't swallow, you're in big trouble, right? You can't eat. So he's doing that slowly. And then this morning, I got a call from the doctor who told me it was impossible last night. I got a call from the doctor and he goes, I said, now, do you believe in miracles now? And and I felt kind of bad because he says, well, yes, but, I said, no, but you said, he says, well, but you never, no, I said, no, but you said he was going to be going and I had to say goodbye. And I wrote him a goodbye poem. He says, well, sometimes I said, please just admit this was a miracle. And then he said, it was very heart touching. He said that same night, 2 other people in the unit died of a heart attack.
Yes.
And I felt so bad for him. I really did. I felt so bad for him. I said, I can't even imagine, that. He said it was, and he said, I cried. He said, I cried. One of the women who died had made it back many times. And I said, I'm so sorry. I said, I have a CD I want to leave for you to listen to in the hands of God. So this morning I spoke to him again, and he's going to be going over for work on getting an angiogram, etc. But he was talking much more coherently,
Okay.
So that's that story. And what's amazing is that in the hands of God played a role in all of this.
Mm.
Now, when
It
we
is
did
such a
this, we never could have
powerful
known.
story.
We never could have known, right?
No. And I mean, when was it on last week Sunday? Was the first time that I used "In the Hands of God" as part of Mass, and it completely threw me the energy and the power in that song and the message in that song. Um, and we got so used to the music and to the words and to everything. Um, and listening to it over and over, and it's beautiful and it's everything that we wanted it to be. And yet, when we started using it for the original intent, and that was for other people to hear it, it just took on a life of its own. And that message, like you said, it went where we never thought it would. And it is so beautiful, and it's such an honor and privilege to be part of that and to be able to, make a difference in one life's person.
And
And
it
it's done
has,
more than that.
and more than that. And I believe that there's spirit working through so many angels in this one, my sister for one, and
Yes.
now my beloved friend Mary Omwake. I have to tell you, I was out doing yoga this morning,
Mm,
and the red cardinal that I love, and it's always been a sign for John and for me. The red cardinal came, and they're very shy birds. They usually just
mm.
peep and eat and fly. I spent at least 3 minutes there. And
Okay.
then a white egret flew right over my head and landed in the palm tree on the property right across. And they
Wow.
don't usually do that. Egrets, will sometimes be around, but not often. So I went, wow, the egret that flew away that morning from the ER has now come back.
Mm, mm,
There's so much that happened here. And I have to say, it's interesting. I did a video series on talks at the East Asian Center in Oahu, handled by some professors and people. And in one of the talks, the professor who talked about death was
mm.
teaching, and a little Asian lady raised her hand to talk to him. And she says, I just have to tell you, Professor, I've been taking this class for months, and I just found out that I have cancer and I have very limited time.
Mm.
And it's very, very different talking about death and what happens than when you're actually dying. And I always remember this was like 20 years ago I did this series, and I've done a lot of talking about life after death, and of course my father, and of course now with Mary and many friends, many messages. But it is when you're going through it with someone intimately like that, very involved with the calls and trying to deal with the doctors and the nurses and the details and the plans and what you do, you're dealing with so many levels that you have to, people said, how could you go through all this? I don't know how you're dealing with all this, because there's been some other things going on as well,
Yes.
having to deal with work and the house I'm in, they want to sell it. And then I figure out moving, and it's like, wow, all at once. And the only way I've been able to survive this week is with friends like you, and I've been calling you every day and WhatsApping you, and also with the prayers and with meditation and being able to call upon God to be there. I know the prayers. I know the prayers made a difference.
Yes.
Um, there's no doubt in my mind. There's been so many people praying, including you, you know. Um, so we can't ever discount, I think, a couple of things. One, that miracles can happen, but they don't always happen. Miracles are not on demand.
Yes. Yes. Well, they don't always appear the way that we thought they would.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I wrote this morning. There is an ever present prayer that brings the heart's bright sphere, remind us that God's love is always with us here. A prayer of such compassion for our earthly ways as we try to survive with all the challenges that we have to face. You can hear this prayer that is alive in our spirit here. It speaks to us inside and brings us peace of mind. It brings us hope when we are down. It lifts us up to heaven's higher ground. There is an ever present prayer. You can hear that sound that echoes so profound, that is God's prayer, that is the love in us that's found. And that is true. There's this ever present prayer.
Yes.
And we've talked about this because I pulled out a Jesus deck of cards, and it said, I pulled it out not once. I would pull it out and then put it back. And then 3 times I pulled out, pray constantly. Is there pray continuously?
Constantly, I think it
I
was.
think it's pray constantly.
Yes.
And we had to talk about this, right?
Yes, definitely. And I mean, the thing is that all of life is one prayer. We just forget that we are busy praying, and that's when we tend to miss out on the glory of the Lord. Um, so every single moment is prayer, because why else are we here? Why else is any living being there, or any non-living thing for that matter? Um, Everything was created for the glory of God, and that is done through prayer. So it is a constant thing. And in some of the monastic communities as well, that constant prayer is what they focus on. Work is prayer. And it's such a beautiful thing to become aware about. Um, and what you spoke about earlier, about the dying and having to face death, it is such a blessing when you get sick sometimes to be able to face death and to be able to face your own mortality. Because the fact of the matter is, we are all busy dying. And if one gets really sick, and I see that almost every day, I work a lot with people who have dreaded disease and cancer and autoimmune disease and all of the bad things. And those people start living because they are made aware of the fact that life is finite. This life is finite, and we're here for only this period of time. And then we're going to go into glorious adventures, yes, but this adventure is there to be taken hold of and to be lived. And we forget about that. And that is the biggest thing that I learn from people who are facing death, is that, every morning wake up and be thankful for being alive. Um, and that then spills over into every moment being prayer. And it's something to, it's easy to sit here and to say that. It's not, I'm not constantly in that space at all. Um, but I try to be. And I think that's all we can do, is to try and remember that what I'm doing now, what I'm doing to somebody else even, is a form of prayer. And when we face that, life kind of takes on a different shade of holiness.
And in that same way, isn't that what Christ consciousness is holding that consciousness of Christ so that you are always in that state.
Yes.
And which is then tying in and able for people who know about enlightenment and Christ consciousness to be able to tie in that it's beautiful to be able to meditate. And it's been for me an amazing thing. And it brought the words about for all of this work I do with CDs and music and working with you. But it's bringing that also from where we learn to connect in spirit into our lives, so it is constant in our lives. And believe me, that's the real challenge is not just sitting by yourself and meditating. And that's a challenge because you have to get past your mind and all the illusions and the darkness, and but to be able to live it in your daily life, especially when I've been trying to negotiate everything that's going on this last weekend, trying to inform people what's happening, still doing my work at the radio station, still doing my shows. And boy, if you bring that energy you have from prayer and meditation into your life, it is a way surrendering to God totally.
Mm. It is, and that is the next step. Is once you become aware of the fact that everything is prayer, then we start asking, so how do I pray, and how do I live a life of prayer? And that's when the inner work happens. That is when the meditation, the prayer, the only just sitting, uh, that we try and practice, and giving up of the ego so that God's will can be done through us. And that's the ultimate of the prayer, I think, is that we do what God's will is. And that is then to live in the compassion of the Christ consciousness and to share that love that is without limit, and that's unconditional.
Well, love is the ultimate prayer.
Mm.
I mean,
It
and it is the ultimate form of compassion and healing, even if the healing can't take place in the way we think it. And that's again where we have to understand, and it's come so clearly to me in this last week, being in the hands of God. And I did a poem on that CD as well that we did with the beautiful music from Stephen Malillo, because I felt I wanted to do a poem as well for my sister, and that was called The Journey Home. And that one, I talk about that in The Journey Home as well. That journey home, boy, the light at that time, I could see it this morning on Mary's journey home. I could see that amazing light that you leave as you leave. There's a word in a beautiful song called Calling All Angels, which I put on my last CD, and it was
Mm.
sung by my friend Martha Rake Braden. And it's, talking about calling all the angels. And boy, I felt like I've had to call all the angels. And in that song, it talks about life, and it talks about death, and it talks about still that, would you ever take away that experience of living in the beautiful light that you get after living of leaving. And that's what I've been experiencing this week, and it's really beyond words. And it's also been, I mean, mind boggling, yes, emotional, yes, and at the same time, just a sense, you get this sense when a miracle happens
Mm.
that is like, well, how could this ever even be? I mean, no one could ever, even in a drama, plan that Mary Omwick would be in the same place there in ICU, leaving her body as John was just coming back to his. I mean, how could that ever be orchestrated or even thought of? And how could it even be that after there's like so small a percentage and the doctor says, no, I'm sorry, there's no hope, that
Mm.
then finally there is that hope.
Yes.
And still not knowing, there's been so much I've told you this week. It's only don't know. The Zen Korean master did a book called Only Don't Know. And I've been in that state this
Mm.
last week and it's not comfortable if
Yeah.
unless you can totally give it over to God, because you just look at, I didn't know what was going to happen to John. I didn't know what to do about my house or where I was going to live. I didn't know what to do about work or anything.
Mm.
And but still getting
Yes.
through this last week.
Yes. I mean, as human beings, we have this innate ability to survive almost anything. And I remember 2 days ago, it was 2 or 3 days ago, when the doctor told you need to start preparing to let John go, where the only option and the only chance was a miracle. And the discussion was about, if one thing just falls into place, then you can start focusing your energy on the other things without the worry, because all of these worries just compound, and it makes life almost unbearable, up to a point where, and I think you might resonate with this feeling of just wanting to step back and say, enough.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to, maybe just for a day, not to think and just be, and almost lose oneself in a state of nothingness. And that's not an option for many of us. So, um, and we asked for the miracle, and there it happened. Um, and in this time, it did happen in the way that we prayed for. Still, I mean, there's long roads ahead.
Yes.
There's It's not um, life carrying on. It is an opportunity, though, to
Make
change.
a new beginning and change. Yes, absolutely. And I love the way you brought in and wove into that the emptiness and nothingness. Of course, that's the Heart Sutra, which I imagine you've been studying. And the Heart Sutra can be very helpful when you get to that point where you get beyond, because no eyes, ear, nose, no death, nothing. You get in the Heart Sutra those statements, that take you beyond all illusion. And it's so interesting because that is a beautiful and real place. And but at the same time, when you're dealing with your life in the details. You have to have both, and that's the human. It's the emptiness and the form. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, and that is where the miracle of life has to be played out between this nothingness and this form, that we are dwelling in. And in that space, are the miracles and life that happens in so many
Yeah,
millions and billions of ways, and still dealing with the details in
okay,
between.
yes, yes.
I think we're going
Um,
to have another CD coming from this, Father. I think we have enough words here that there might be another CD coming from this.
I feel that as well. It's starting to brew. It is
I feel
starting
it.
to brew.
You start to feel that there's another one brewing there?
I do, and it's got a different energy.
Yes.
It,
Yes.
it feels completely different. Um, I don't want to say more hopeful because In the Hands of God was it is a hopeful CD. It is a I think it's a very introspective CD. Whereas maybe the next one is going to be slightly more sharing of joy and sharing of um, expressions of God.
I like that. That's a good title. Maybe that'll be our title, Expressions of God. I like
That
that.
works.
That might be it. All right. I've got lots of words.
I'm ready for you.
Lots of words waiting for songs. And I have a meeting with this group of people that do writing songs, and they're having where you can spend money. And I didn't want to spend the money, I really
Yeah.
didn't. But it's called the American Songwriter Meet with Your Mentor. And I went,
Mm.
oh, okay, well, I can really improve my songwriting skills. And then I went to see who they had for songwriting skills. And there's a guy named Dean Fields. I said, oh, well, I'm going to check and see what he's done. And I
Yeah.
think I'll see. And guess what he's worked with? He's had songs recorded by Laurie McKenna.
Ooh, beautiful.
Yes, and others. So we'll see where it leads to
Great.
this journey that God is leading us on in the hands of God. And
Yes.
people can go, and now it's there at Here Now. You can go CindyPaulos Here Now in the Hands of God, and it's streaming everywhere. And you can go to In the Hands of God, and there's a link to it, inthehandsofgod.com.
Mhm.
And Father, do you want to give out? Because you're now on Inside Timer.
I am. I am. Um, you know, life is taking us in on many different journeys, and God is opening up a lot of opportunities, and He's reminding us all of callings that we might not have listened to up to now. And so with your inspiration about a week and a bit ago, um, I finally registered on Insight Timer, and I uploaded one of the mass recordings that we did for last week Sunday, um, because you mentioned that people on that specific app don't like the word God, and a lot of people want to shy away from that and look at the purely spiritual thing because of hurt and past things that they've experienced. And I just felt that I'm in a unique position where we can try and bridge that gap, and we can show people that even if you've been hurt by your institutional church, it doesn't mean that all church groups and all religious orders are the same. There's always a thing to be said for extremism, and um, not all Catholics are bad, and not all Catholic priests are the same. And saying that, I mean, I love all Catholics. I love all people. So, but there is from the more spiritually minded people, there is this thing of if you are linked to a specific church group or a specific religion, then you are working with lower level energies, and yeah.
There's been a prejudice. Absolutely. I've seen it. And it's such a shame that the shadow's been cast. And I have to say, you are an amazing counselor. And I also encourage you to do that because I've been able to talk with you like I haven't been able to talk with anyone else I know. And I have a lot of spiritual friends and I love them, nothing against that. But you just have a beautiful way of listening. And I encourage you in that counseling field as well, because you are an amazing counselor. And it is your practice, I think, that has brought you to this point, and what you're doing, that you've been able to. It's not like I'm going to confession, but I am confessing a lot.
And the thing with that, I mean, um, it's about 3 years ago now. I did my first homily, exam homily, and it was about sin. And you and I have spoken about that on a previous recording before. But the thing with going to confession and going to see a priest for that is not necessarily to be absolved of your sins, because what is sin? And if we are moving towards a concept of non-dualism, then sin and it doesn't really gel. So sin for me is times that I've forgotten about God, times that I'm not in prayer or in communion with the Lord. And in those times, I then misstep. And that is what the priest is for. It is to go to the priest and to say, not forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Those are the institutional words. But the meaning behind that for me is guide me, give me
Hmm.
advice so that I can learn. And that is the job of the priest.
And by doing that, turning you back to that amazing power, acting as a servant of God,
Yes.
to be able to be embraced by that love that God is. And it's so big. It's so, I put that in that end of that poem that I wrote, that is a spoken word in the hands of God. The last words of that poem is, there's such love in the hands of God.
Yes.
And that's the truth. Well, we could talk forever, but we'll have to
Yes.
do this again soon.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
just very thrilled that you're there. I'm very thrilled that the miracles happen. I'm thrilled that the CD came out, and I'm sending that energy to my sister Pam, saying it's out. What words you brought to me and through me is
Mm.
now out. Thank you, God, and for the miracle of John's coming back from the dead, literally Lazarus. you know,
Yes.
um, and for you being there throughout this week, such a comfort,
Yes.
to see me
Yes.
through when times where I just had no one else that could really understand what I was going through. I can't ever thank you enough. It's just really been an amazing blessing having such a spiritual good friend and counselor as you. And people, go to you. You're on Inside Timer at what? What's your name there?
FR, so Father Carel-Piet van Eeden.
Okay,
Yeah, I
and
decided to retain the difficult Dutch name.
yes, and people can find out more of you also on the In the Hands of God. So God bless you.
Thank you,
Lots
my
of
friend.
love. Wonderful
Yes,
talking to you, my friend.
it was fun.
Till next time.
Definitely.
Aloha.
God bless.